It's Closing Time is an engaging and informative conversation between RentSpree CEO Michael Lucarelli and some of the most accomplished and important voices in the real estate industry. This podcast is brought to you by RentSpree, your premier end-to-end rental management software from listing to lease.
Welcome to It's Closing Time. I'm your host, Michael Lucarelli, CEO of RentSpree, and I'm excited to be hosting this podcast where I get to have insightful and meaningful conversations with some of the leading voices in real estate. In this episode, I'll be talking to Matt Kuchar, CEO and founder of Showami. We'll be discussing his company as well as his journey as a real estate professional. Matt, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
And so obviously you come from an agent background and you saw a pain point that you wanted to solve. And so you founded your company, Showami. And I'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about what were those pain points and then how did you solve them with your company?
Sure. So I started out as a real estate agent. I've been in the industry for 20 years. And, anytime that you do a good job for your clients, right, you just get more and more clients. So over the years, I had started to build up a bigger clientele, and it was about half buyers, half sellers. And, many times, you're trying to do something. Like I wanted to plan. One day I decided to go skiing. This is really how it came to be. And it was on a Friday. I finally get up to the slopes. Me and my buddy were like so excited. And I get a call just as we're about to get on the lift. And this person's like, I got to go see this home. It's in the neighborhood. It's the perfect house. And I'm like, dude, I'm just getting on the slopes. Like, you got to give me a break here. So I did what any agent would do, right? I'm like, all right, let me call everybody in my office. So I started calling and texting. And my office, I'm out of Denver, was in Highlands Ranch, and the home that they wanted to see was in downtown Denver. It's Friday. They wanted, they work during the day, so they couldn't get off till like 5:30, which is like the worst time to be in Denver, right? It's like rush hour. So eventually it took me 45 minutes to an hour of texting and calling to get an agent. And then, her name was Laura. And then we had to have that awkward conversation. Like, am I paying you? Are we sharing the client? Is this a referral? Are we working them together? This is a past client, right? I'd already sold them a home before and they were just trying to upgrade. All I needed them to do was get in the home. So I was like, hey, what will you charge me just to go open the door, get them in the house? And so we settled on $100. I ended up writing the contract later that night, got them into the home they wanted. But, I was having a beer with a friend later going like, oh, this was painful. Like, I'm seeing all these people going up the slope and I'm on the phone going like, I got to get somebody to show this house. And, you always hear the story of they're at a bar and there's this napkin and they write down their business plan. We literally did that. And, that's how, it's like coming up with Uber for realtors. We just need someone to open the door. And yeah, so that's how Showami had come to be.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard similar stories or people just trying to find someone last minute to do a showing.
Yep.
So that completely resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners here today.
Oh, totally. Well, and what they do, and what I did, like you have these Facebook groups, right? So everybody in the office is on a Facebook group, and they put it out there. But again, not everybody's on Facebook. Not everybody knows it. And where your office is located could be totally different from where the showing is. So you're asking somebody to a pretty big ask, like this. It was 45 minutes to drive one way, and then 45 minutes home. And, it would have been better to have people in that area show the home, right? That's what we were looking for and not have this other. So we've created the fastest, easiest, most reliable way to get buyers into homes, without the agent, the buyer's agent needing to be there. And we use only agents. Everybody's licensed, everybody's, got MLS access, things like that. So.
And what I think is really important about the platform is you really help to make sure that the relationship is maintained between the actual client and the agent, right? So there's
Yep.
nothing that kind of gets in between there. Can you tell a little bit about how you were able to achieve that and why that's important?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the first things that comes up is, hey, how do I know this agent isn't going to steal my client, right? So we put procure and cause waivers in there. We also have, in all of our marketing and in the terms of use, that buyer or the showing agent is just there to open the door. They are to have no communication with the buyer after that. So, we still recommend people do a buyer's agency. I mean, that's just common practice. That's what people should be doing anyway. And
Mhm.
maintain relationship. The biggest thing is relationship. If you have a great relationship with your buyer, you don't want this to be the only way you show homes, right? It's just for the ones you can't be at. You still need to be in contact and build those relationships. But what we ended up finding is that, I built it for one use, right? It's like I'm unavailable or I'm double booked, I can't be there. And, pretty soon other agents are like, hey, that's a pretty cool tool. I want to use it. I want to use it. And and that happened. But then you find all these other uses. Like I'll give you one example. I think of rentals. We've lately that's been one of the pain points in the rental market is the agents and the property managers, if they spend all their time out showing the houses, it's an inefficient use of their time. So, they're starting to hear about us and go like, "Hey, can I use this to show this home across town?" They don't want to drive an hour and a half to show that house. It's, coming back an hour. It's a waste of their time. If they could pay $39 or $44 just to get the door open, and what they'll do also is they'll schedule two or three people back to back to back,
Yep.
pay the guy a little bit more just to stay there. It's efficiencies. That's what anybody who's in business is always looking for, the most efficient way to do something.
And that's really important to maintain efficiency at all times. Time is one of the most valuable assets that an agent really has. So they need to safeguard that and be really careful and deliberate about how they're allocating their time.
Yep.
For the agents that can be enlisted to help with showing, can you tell a little bit more about what's the incentive for them to
Sure.
be a part of this?
Absolutely. First of all, we find that the showing agents are typically, and there's no typical, right? But could be newer agents, don't have a lot of clients, they have more spare time. And so it's a great way to use their license. They get money, they get paid to do it. So that helps to cover their realtor costs, right? You just go through your licensing, you spent thousands of dollars and you're all excited, and then it's like, what do I do now? And this at least gets them out using their license. They build relationships, they gain market knowledge. So now hey, now I know what homes in this neighborhood are like. One of the other things that they'll do that we try to coach them is when you're out showing a home, take a picture in front of it, put it on your social media, your Instagram, like, hey, out showing homes today. You know anybody thinking of buying or selling? It's a great marketing ploy. It's not your client, right? You're not going to get a commission. You're getting paid to show the home, but now everybody in your sphere is going like, oh, Matt's out there showing homes again, man. That's a cool house. You know what? I was thinking about upgrading. Maybe I should contact him. It works, and you're building relationships with other agents now when you're out showing your own homes for your clients. They've seen your name before. Oh, this guy showed my home over on Main Street. So at least they get familiar with you. So there's a lot of incentives, not just getting paid, but there's a lot of other things that's in it for the showing agent.
And I would imagine that on top of just projecting that out to your network, you could also use it as somewhat of like a sandbox where you can just hone some of your communication skills or practice, just conveying details about the particular listing. Again, even though it's not yours, not your client, but it's probably a good chance to get that kind of practice in as well, especially if you haven't done that a whole lot.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, even a lot of the agents when it's their first couple of showings, there's the whole process of going into the MLS, scheduling it. Some markets use showing time. You have to set up your showing time account or whatever. There's a bunch of different services that have launched in recent months and years. So you get used to it. It helps them so that when they are doing it for themselves, they're just way more prepared. And the brokerages are starting to use it as a tool, right? They see this as a way to help retention for their younger agents. Like, okay, they get them busy, they get them out using their license, and then the busier agents who have teams and stuff like that, this is a way for them to leverage, right? They don't need to be out there showing every home. They need to be on the phone, calling their clients, building relationships, doing the things that give the high dollar value things. So showing the homes, sometimes they need to be out there doing it, but it gives them another option. And so it's a benefit to the busier agents and everybody. And then we have agents who do both, right? Sometimes they're busy, sometimes they're a little bit slower. It's a win-win, and the client wins. That in today's market, we're such a in America, like we're instant now. I want instant gratification, right? I want to see that home at 5 o'clock, and people,
Yep.
I mean, they're understanding, but they get like, "Ugh, I wanted to be there at 5. I can't do 6. I can't do 7. Now at least you go, hey, all right, you can't do that. I've got a team of showing agents. They're going to get you into the home. And if it's the one, I'll do whatever I've got to get in the home in an hour, check it out, and we'll write that contract. But it gets the client in the home when they want to, not on your schedule.
I think it is important to make sure that agents are catering to changing client needs. And you mentioned that those are kind of like the expectation. It's an on-demand culture that we're in now. And whether you want to talk about millennials or Gen Z, they are getting everything really like delivered to them almost in real time now, whether it's an Amazon package or their dinner through DoorDash or Postmates or something. So this allows agents to provide that at the drop of a hat when needed. So that's really important to provide that level of service that clients are expecting now.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And it's hard to plan anything because as an agent, you're sitting there like, okay, I know that the drop of a hat, someone's going to call me and I need to get out there and show a home. So people don't plan.
Yeah.
So this gives them another option. But yeah, Amazon totally spoils us, you know.
And one of the most common things that we hear from agents is, oh, they have a pain point that they're experiencing regularly, almost like every day. And it can be a little bit daunting to think about how you can go about creating a solution for that. So you mentioned that originally you created this more or less just for yourself, and
Yep.
then you started getting external demand for this when people saw what you had. Can you talk a little bit more about how you brought the resources in to develop something like this? Because I know it can be challenging to try to find out, if you have an idea for a software or an app or a platform, what are the steps that people need to take to get that enacted? And how did you go about doing that? Because that, I think, is very challenging for a lot of people, especially you may not have access to technical resources or a ton
Right.
of capital or anything like that.
Right. So absolutely. With the first step, right, you have this idea and you're like, oh, this has got to be great. So I started searching to see if anybody was out there doing it because I didn't want to create this, right? I was like, if this already exists, let me use somebody else's service. That would be much easier. I just needed help. And at that point, I didn't see there wasn't anything out there. So it's like, okay, this is an option. So I started talking to other agents to kind of vet the idea, much like what you did when you created Rent Spree, right? You're trying to figure out, is this a need? So I did surveys. I made sure there was a need. Then, how do you monetize this? How am I going to make money? And there's the SaaS business, which is software as a service, and then there's other transactional, much like Uber. So we decided to go with the transactional where we get paid on each one. So for instance, how do we make money? If an agent pays $39 for the showing, we get 15 and the showing agent gets 24. And that's our lowest. But our average is actually 49 and it's, the agents make more than that. But that's then we went and I started interviewing software developers and I met with an attorney and I had to vet them. There was the one guy that's like, we can build this $300,000 and I'm like, dude, that's a lot of money. I don't have $300,000. Like I could write you a check, but I don't think that thing's gonna cash. And then I had these other guys who were like, you can pay me by the hour. and I was just really didn't have a lot of confidence that they could actually get the product. And I kind of met this one team through a resource that had all of the aspects, right? They had the developer, they had a little bit of marketing, they had the UI UX people. And so that's what we decided to go with. They built the MVP. The thing is, you always think when you're building something, you have the end product in mind, right? And you want it to do all these things. But then they kind of go, let's just get the minimally viable product out there. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. We're going to add to this, but let's just get it out there. And that's what we did. It took them about 5 months to build, and we launched in October of 2016. And much like you probably, I built this great thing. This is my baby. Everyone's gonna love it. You put it out there, and like nothing happens. You're like, where's all my clients? Where's all the people using this? It's crazy.
I know how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, during that time, I found a guy that had started what was at that time called the Showing Connection. And this was halfway, I've already spent the money. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this guy has what I've got, so I'm going to try his service. And it was really low tech. He was using virtual assistants to actually dial agents to go, hey, we got a showing for you, and texting, and it was all low tech stuff. Eventually, he was getting tired of it. He's like, I've done this for a couple of years. I'm not making any money. So I bought his database for like $2,000. And that was, once I had that and we emailed all those agents, then pretty soon it was like, oh, we got 15 showings this month, and then 20, and then 30, and you're like, oh, this is great, but I'm still losing money. And then eventually, if somebody picks you up, and it kind of takes off. And that was one of the things for us. It was the MLS in Denver is called RE Colorado. It's this big, there's tens of thousands of agents. And I'd went in there. I'm like, hey, I got this new, Showami, and they're like, no, we're not gonna do it. And then I was persistent, and they're like, all right, we'll feature you in an email. That day we had like 150 people sign up, and I thought, put me on Shark Tank, I'm ready to go, But yeah, that's kind of what happened.
It's fascinating how similar of a story that it was to Rent Spree, because you do have that stuff where if you build it, it doesn't mean that people will come, and you have to kind of make something happen. So it's cool that you kind of got that database that you're able to reach out to, tapped into your local MLS to leverage some of their contacts, and in the end of the day, you got validation from the market that this is a tool that people need and use. What markets are you guys currently in now where you're strong?
Sure. So we've got agents in every state but like 2. And so we're pretty, like, I think it was
That's huge.
North Dakota we don't have any agents in. I think Montana is the other one that we've got like 2 agents in. But obviously we started in Colorado, so we've got thousands of agents in Colorado who are using us. Our next biggest states would be California, Texas, Florida, Georgia. And it works really good around major metro areas, right? Where there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of showings, there's a lot of showing agents. We've got great coverage. The harder part is, like, and we found this in Colorado, you're in Denver and you got this showing that's in the mountains. Well, that's an hour's drive, no one's going to drive an hour for $24, It's got to be within 15, 20 minutes of you. So we had to figure out how to get those picked up, and now we actually do get them picked up, but people pay a little bit more for that. It's understandable. But yeah, well, those are our major markets are, Texas, California, Florida. Yep.
And for us too, also when we launched Rent Spree, keep it pretty simple at first. You can't go crazy adding all the bells and whistles. And hey, like, even just launching that MVP, it gives you the chance to kind of get feedback, because maybe even what you think should be the end product with all the bells and whistles, maybe that's not exactly the thing that people want. So by launching something that's more basic, you can not only deploy faster and for a little bit less capital, but you can get some feedback and then kind of make sure, using like user feedback and behavior, that you can kind of get to the right point in the end. How has your product changed over time since that first MVP launch? What were some of the things that you learned, and how has it changed over the past couple of years?
Absolutely. Dude, that's an amazing question. One is social proof. Like one of the things that we do now is the agents rate each other after the transaction, right? Hey, were they on time? Were they professional? And the higher ratings and the more showings that a person does, the higher up in the queue they get for more showings. So
Hmm.
so it's kind of that social proof. That wasn't built into the MVP at all. The preferred agent. So a lot of people, once you've used somebody in the past, you kind of like working with them, or your client's like, hey, this guy's really professional. He's always on time. I want to use him. You can suggest that specific agent. Also, brokerages, one of the things that we found after kind of doing this is some of the brokerages they were open. They're like, hey, we'll show for anybody, and anybody can show for us. But then you have others that are really closed. They're like, I only want people within my group to get my showings. So we had to create these organizations where it's a closed group and that. So it's listening to what your clients. Give me some examples of some things that you've seen in your business that, maybe you weren't sure that they would use it for it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is cool. This is a use that I didn't think of before.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff out there with us, and I think like one of the things that we started noticing like pretty early on too is just like the relationships between some of the individuals, and like with Rentspree in particular, you have a lot of agents that are they're representing landlords because they're working with renters, and so like we noticed early on that a lot of these agents they would be vetting these prospective tenants. They'd then have to share the reports and make a recommendation to the landlord ultimately, or maybe the listing agent if you're representing the renter. And so just by seeing that, we saw that as an opportunity where you now, instead of having to download reports and then email them to a landlord, which is sensitive information that you're sending through unsecured email, you can grant access to a landlord directly through Rentspree so that the landlord can basically just go directly into Rentspree and view the reports and maybe even like a recommendation that the agent said, oh, hey, look at this prospective tenant. Here's all their information. They look pretty good. And then the landlord can kind of communicate with the agent directly there. So it saves time by letting everyone kind of communicate in one spot, and then reduces liability because you're not having to take the sensitive stuff and then having it float around, or even like people still kind of print stuff out and like have it
Right,
hanging
right.
around. So that's something that we're
Brilliant.
pretty excited to offer to people.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, data has become real, all the privacy laws and everything. It's like, yeah, so brilliant. Yeah, it's kind of like a sub account for the agent, right? So that their landlord can, or the owner can kind of peer in and see this stuff, but the control is within the person who who has it.
Yep. And that
Excellent.
agency relationship is really important in the end of the day too. And this just helps that also. And even like giving clients what they demand, which is, hey, like you don't have to have the client dealing with some disorganized process. You have everything organized in one spot. It's nice and easy, making it smooth for them. And then of course that reflects back positively on the agent.
Yep.
So
Yep. They would love that. I think we had one that I hadn't thought of when I first created this, but it ended up like exploding. So one of the things that the agents, what we typically do, let's say I'm in Highlands Ranch and I get a lead that's 2 hours away in Colorado Springs. And maybe Colorado Springs isn't the best example because they're really only an hour and 15 minutes. But what we would do typically is we would refer that out to another agent, right? So, it's too far. I can't go that far. I don't know that market that well. And we would give that agent a referral, and they would give us 25% and the agent would keep 75. So what we've started to see were agents that were in Denver were now scheduling showings in Fort Collins in Colorado Springs, and they didn't refer it anymore. They just paid the $40 for the showing, wrote the contract because they're still licensed, and the data's out there now. Like you could find out all of the information that you need. And so pretty soon these agents they've expanded their areas, and they're selling more homes in areas that they normally would have referred business, and now they're keeping their commissions because of that. So that was not part of our original thoughts in the MVP. It wasn't even a like, didn't think somebody would use it that way. Rentals is something, well, like I said, that's a new market for us that now that some of the property managers are starting to figure out, that services like ours exist, and they're like, this is a much more efficient way to do business.
Yeah, I think that's important to touch upon all that and to get feedback. And it sounds like you've done a great job iterating on the product and making sure that it can continue to provide benefit for folks. Next, I wanted to dive in deeper into your journey just as a real estate professional. But first, I want to break things up a little bit. So we have our segment called Meet in the Middle. And I'll ask you 3 kind of rapid fire questions. So just give a quick answer, and we'll kind of get started if you're ready.
Let me try. Yes.
All right. So let's go with the first one. Your number 1 book recommendation for real estate professionals.
It's got to be the Millionaire Real Estate MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Gary Keller did it. They've done a few revisions.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely think that's one. And followed by the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So if you're in real estate and you're making commissions, you also need to own your own real estate, right? We should be managing other people's properties, but we should be managing our own as well. Absolutely.
Yep. Second one, what's the most underrated part about the business of real estate?
The time. I think people don't realize how much time you have to put in before you get a return on your investment.
Yeah, that's a common theme that you kind of underestimate that. Finally, what's your big prediction for 2022?
Boy, that is a loaded question, right? My big thing is, what are interest rates going to do? Are interest rates going to continue to stay low? Are they going to climb? If they climb, how will that impact us? There's no way that we can repeat what we did this year as far as appreciation. So my thoughts are, we'll see a leveling off. I don't see there's no decline or anything like that. There's not enough inventory for us to see a decline, but I think maybe a leveling off and maybe hopefully more sanity in the market. We'll see.
So for Showami, you've been working on it for now, what is it, a little bit over 5 years, right?
Yep.
So can you share a little bit on what's been your biggest challenge since you started?
Yeah, I think time management and it's the same challenge that I had when I was a busy real estate agent, right? We're all inundated with information, and some of it I choose and some of it's thrust upon me. And emails, texts, phone calls, the websites that I go to, eye candy, clickbait. I mean, you're just Facebook, social media. And so I think the biggest thing is managing my time and making sure that I'm making the best use of it, and knowing that of all the resources that we have, our most limited resource truly is time, and we need to value it.
And I think time management is crucial for any entrepreneur, which of course every agent, you have to think of yourself as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
For me, I think one of the ways that I found very successful to help manage time a little bit is I'll pretty much work in like rules of 3. So I'll think about, like, even just on a daily basis, what are like the 3 most impactful things that I want to get done today, that if I get those done, I'll be moving the needle. And you can even look at that from on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even annually. And that helps to like really focus in so that you're not kind of getting caught up with like a rat race and getting pulled in different directions and everything like that. Because there are those distractions anyway that you'll kind of encounter. But as long as you kind of simplify things to 3s, I found that pretty successful for me. Are there any tips or strategies that you use to help yourself kind of manage time, given that you've got a ton going on? You've got your real estate business, you've got Showami, I'm sure you've got, other obligations in your life as well.
Yep. I love that. I love the rule of 3s. I think I'm going to I'm definitely going to start putting that into practice because, like right now, I'm looking at my list and I had six. I had six things that I wanted to get done today, right? And and I got some of it done. The first and I'm a list guy, so I do that. But um, I I think one of the things that I learned from, have you ever heard of the 4 Hour Work Week?
I have.
Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss.
Yep.
So I love that book. I love his mindset where if there's anything that can be duplicated or you can have somebody else do that doesn't require you to physically do it, that to me is value. Now, it takes time. So that's working on your business rather than in it, right?
Yep.
So much time of us as realtors is spent working in our business. We're calling clients. We're doing all that, but we don't put in the systems that it takes to scale it to make it big. And that's what I think. Yeah, Tim Ferriss does a masterful job of going like, hey, you've got to find other ways to get other people to do that so that you can focus on the big picture and the things. So yeah, that's sorry.
Yeah, no,
Long-winded.
that's very valuable, like delegation, processes, tools that can help. That's very valuable for sure. The other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on that you mentioned earlier is that you ended up working a little bit with RE Colorado.
Hmm.
Are you still working with them, and have you explored other relationships with any of the other MLSs? As you might know, Rentspry has worked with MLSs for a number of years now, where we have some really successful integrations into a number of the larger ones. And I'm just curious how that's been going for you, and if there's any other relationships that you've developed since
Yep.
that time with RE Colorado at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. RE Colorado is still our top association that we're engaged with. In fact, they've got a post going out next week. A lot of agents, not to time this thing, but it's right around Christmas. When they travel, they use us, right? A lot of our first time users come during this time of the year where they start posting on social media like, hey, I need someone to help show this house,
So you guys are
and they're
probably
like,
busy right now too.
yeah, sort of. Like I wish there was more inventory, but yeah, and so people invariably go like, "Why are you posting on here? Use Showami." And so a lot of people find out about us, and so we always do a nice marketing push right now. And RE Colorado is putting a post out. The other MLS is Aura, which is Orlando Regional. They're really a great board, and we're working on other relationships. But yeah, I think that's you know we we need we need those relationships with the industry leaders and stuff like that.
Well, Matt, it's closing time for this particular episode, and I want to thank you so much again for agreeing to be a guest. And before we go, though, I thought it might be awesome for you to share with our audience briefly what you remember about the first deal that you closed. Could be any kind.
Okay, got it. I'm trying to think. Yes, so I got started selling manufactured homes to retirees in Florida on leased land. So this is going back to like 1990. And I remember how nervous I was, how scared. I mean, I was like, this person really wants to write this contract. Like, all right, crap, what do I do? It's like, and I remember the guy, his name was Terry, just kind of like taking me under his wing, and he's like, okay, come in my office, and he's writing the contract, and he's showing me what he's doing, and I just remember how grateful I was to have somebody there to help me. And I think that's who I want to be for others now.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you for that, Matt. So, this has been episode number 5 of It's Closing Time with Rentspry, and I hope that all of our listeners have enjoyed this conversation. As a reminder, you can visit our website, rentspry.com, to learn more about our service. Also, I would highly encourage you to check out Showami. So, you can also visit them at showami.com. That's SHOWAMI.com. Also, make sure to follow a couple of our social platforms at Renspree. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, It's Closing Time with Renspree. So for all of you out there listening, and to Matt, thank you guys so much. Take care.
Thank you.